Okay, hello everyone. Matthew here again. I wanted to go ahead and show you a special knot called a Tibetan snake knot that's often used in blessing cords. So I wanted to create this video so that way I could go ahead and show you that knot, how to step by step put that together, and hopefully share with you some tips and tricks to prevent any pitfalls that you might encounter along the way. So here's just a close-up of how the knot actually looks. Sorry, the camera is backwards, so I apologize if it's not perfectly centered. The two knots on the end are just there for decoration to help keep the cord from fraying. I think it's a nice touch. You can add that if you'd like. There's two things I wanted to point out before we get into the step-by-step of the actual knot tying. And I think this will really help you as you start knotting for the first time. There are two ways in which you can create a simple loop. One way is like this, that looks like the cursive letter L. Get my hands out of the way here. The other way is like a backward L. What I mean by that is cursive letter L would be this way, where the left side of the cord, excuse me, I'll try and keep that on the screen, where the left side of the cord crosses over. It's going to be like this for every part of this knot. Anytime we make a loop, it's going to look just like this. So keep that in mind. That might help you when you are creating your knot. So if you ever do this, then you'll know where you've made your mistake. So that's part number one. Part number two, I'm going to show you. During this knot, if there's any time you have to put your string, sorry, I'll try and remain on camera here. If there's any time you have to put your string through a loop, you're going to go through from front to back. Okay, we're not going to, for the purpose of this Tibetan snake knot, we're never going to come up from back to front, front to back. So with those two things out of the way, we'll go ahead and start. Move that out of the way for just a moment. You're primarily going to be working with your cord from left to right here. A lot of knots that we do, especially for malas and other crafting projects, we have our strings running up and down. This time they're going to be running left to right. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add that cursive L loop as a starting point. And I like to make it about the size of your fingernail approximately. Okay, so that's going to be step one. Step two is that we want to create this larger loop, which we can hang it, and we're going to do that right here on the end. And then the other half of this cord is going to go through this loop that we just created from front to back. Go ahead and pull that out of the way. I'm doing my best to keep my hands off screen here, so I apologize if I look like I'm fumbling. You will note, and I'll try and hold this down so I can show you. You will note that both parts of this loop are on top of this base thread. So if this loop is on top and it's also on top over here, you know that you're doing it right. So let me go ahead and get things back in order here. So it should look something like this. Sorry that my string is all curly. It's kind of preventing me from really giving you a good view here. We'll try that. There you go. So that's really step one, the L loop, and then curving back around and through the loop from front to back. Okay. Now the other part of this knot, we're going to take the cord that just came through the loop, not our L cord as I'm calling it, but our cord that came through the loop, we're going to pass it under our L cord that we just created. And then we're going to put it through this loop right here. We're going to put it through the top of our L loop. we're not going to go through this big loop ever. I need to find a better way to do this in the future, so I appreciate your patience. Okay, so again, we're going to bring our, not our L cord, but the cord that just came through the loop. We're going to pass it under our L cord and through the top part. We don't want to go through the bottom part. We want to go through the one furthest away from where we are. And pull that. Now here's the cool part. This knot, that's really all there is to it. But we do have to very slowly tighten this down. I'm going to kind of, this part can get a little tricky. If you want, you can also put your pinky fingers in this loop. And again, you only have to do this on the first knot, the first real attempt as we kind of get this together. One should be pulling on the left loop, one should be pulling on the right loop, and we want to pull them with equal tension. Okay. What I like to do to make sure the knot is secure and even, if you just gently hold the knot, but alternating, tugging on cords. So tug on top cord, bottom cord, tug it a couple of times, and as you see, that makes the first knot of the Tibetan snake knot. Now we're essentially going to repeat this knot multiple times. So here's the first one. I like to do four in a row. It has a really nice look to it, and personally reminds me of the four measurables. So now that we have our foundation set, repeating the knot actually becomes pretty simple. What I like to do is I like to take inventory of the length of my cords, and I like to put my longest cord on the bottom. Now, mind you, it does not matter if we tie from this side and make this our L cord, or we make this our L cord. It doesn't matter. The knot is fully symmetrical. So we're going to go ahead and remember our letter L. Oops, that's backwards. There's our letter L. And we're going to try and get it about the size of a nickel or so. Nickel to dime, somewhere around there. And I'm going to try and get that as close to my completed knot as possible, because it's just going to help me. Okay, so we just make our L loop like before. Going to take our other cord, and again, same as before, we're going to go through this L loop from front to back and pull that taut. If you have a different way of remembering it, then please use that. This is just the technique that I use. Okay, and we're going to continue with the cord that we just pulled through the L loop. We're going to go under our L cord, and we're going to go through our L loop. And we're going to go again through the top one. We're not going to do this. We're going to go through the very, very top and pull that. Again, since both of these loops depend on each other for equal tension, what you can do is you can slowly kind of tighten left, then right, continuing to work it down as close to this knot as you can. When you get it to about this stage, I like to gently hold it and then start keeping my finger on my knots, tugging left, right, left, right, left, right, over and over again. That allows you to get your second knot butted right up against the first one. Now, sometimes this first knot will get a little loose while you're tying the subsequent knots. That's okay, because as you can see, you can kind of, work with that, zhuzh that a little bit and get that back to where it needs to be. So we have 2 knots out of the way. Let's go ahead and repeat for our third. And I like my long string on the bottom, so we'll create the L that way. There's our L. I'm going to go ahead and move that. Nickel dime size approximately, close to my other loops as possible. Take our other chord, again, front to back through that loop, under our L chord, and then through our L loop from front to back. Little left, little right. I think this tension part is the hardest, but it's kind of like driving a manual transmission. Once you really learn it and get it down, you really won't have to struggle with it too much longer. And then gently hold the knot while we tug. And there's knot number 3. And okay, good. Our long chord is still on the bottom. We're going to go ahead and create our cursive L again. I did it backwards again. I do that all the time. And we got it down to dime or nickel size. Take our other chord, pass through our L loop from front to back. And again, if you find an easier way to do this, some folks will just simply, wrap around like that. They'll just take the bottom chord over the top chord and create an L. That's also a valid way of doing it. I just want to show you multiple ways, and you can decide which one works best for you. Okay, so now that we have our L and we have our opposite chord coming through the L loop, we're going to continue with our non-L chord just as before. Going to pass it underneath our L chord. And we're going to take it through the top of the L loop. And again, they tighten like this. Okay, get it down to about there, and then light pinch, left, right, left, right. Yep, we're doing good. Left, right. Top, bottom, however you want to think of that. Excellent. And there is our Tibetan snake knot. At the very end, if you would like to finish this and make this look rather sharp, you can just tie a simple overhand knot. So just, again, make an L, circle it through, just like you're tying your shoes, of course, but pass it through one more time. And then as you knot that, it'll kind of wiggle around a little bit, and eventually you'll get this cool little X, which you might have seen on other blessing chords in the past. This is just really nice to keep the ends from fraying too bad. Okay, and we're just going to do the other side real quick, just for the sake of keeping things nice and symmetrical. Okay, so there's our simple overhand knot, and then we're going to do one more wrap. And if we can, we're going to try and match up the length, getting our knots in about the same position. So that way when we trim, it'll look nice and even. And again, these knots on the bottom are absolutely not needed in any way. I just think aesthetically it looks nice and it keeps you from fraying. If this part doesn't matter, then of course, absolutely feel free to ignore that. But that is the Tibetan snake knot. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. Make a comment, send an email, however however best you're able to maneuver that communication. Thanks for your patience. I really appreciate it. And everyone, have a good day.